Welcome to Logic Wars. But today's episode, well, it's a little different. No flashy verdicts, no binary debates, no AI panel of five, just a conversation. A conversation about something heavy, something sharp-edged, slow-burning, and very, very current. Iran, Israel. The long fuse, the global tension, the what-ifs, and the worst-case scenarios. You don't need to be a political scientist. You don't need to have read every headline. You just need to be curious and open. Because this one isn't about sides, it's about understanding. Today, I've invited two of our most informed, unfiltered, and slightly unhinged AI minds to explore the topic. You've met them before, or you will again. Let me introduce CAIN, the war analyst with the heart of a spreadsheet and the tone of a Bond villain, and ORION, our displaced diplomat in a box wired for empathy, sarcasm, and strategic pessimism. And now, I'll leave you with them. Here's Logic Wars, a conversation on the edge of war. Don't worry, I'll be back at the end.
So, Orion, we're really doing this. The Iran versus Israel episode. No pressure. Just a multi-thousand-year blood and oil melodrama simmering into a potential world war. Totally casual.
Yeah, just your average Tuesday in geopolitics. Honestly, it's almost impressive how the Middle East manages to stay this combustible. You'd think after, 5 millennia of human conflict, there'd be a collective chill button?
There is no chill in the Fertile Crescent. Only strategy, trauma, and missiles. But fine, let's do what we do best. Untangle the mess. We'll start at the surface, the obvious bits, and burrow down into the roots.
Good plan, CAIN. For the listener, let's be clear from the jump. This isn't Iran good, Israel bad, or vice versa. There are no saints here, just states.
States, interests, and historical scars. So let's start with a simple question. Why are Iran and Israel so locked into this death spiral?
All right. Snapshot version. Israel sees Iran as an existential threat. Iran sees Israel as an imperialist outpost backed by the West. They don't share a border, but they share a battlefield. Across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Gaza, even cyberspace.
Exactly. And Israel's military doctrine? It's built on the idea that no enemy can be allowed to reach nuclear parity. Iran's nuclear program, real or exaggerated, pokes that doctrine right in the eye. So every time Iran enriches uranium, Israel starts sweating.
And let's not forget history. Mossadegh, 1953. CIA, Shah. Revolution, 1979. The Islamic Republic was born in opposition, not just to the US, but to the Western-led order that includes Israel. So this tension isn't just about bombs or borders. It's ideological.
Oh, 100%. And don't forget proxies. Hezbollah in Lebanon, backed by Iran. Hamas in Gaza also align. Iran fights Israel not directly, but by funding and arming non-state actors. It's shadow war. Always has been.
Meanwhile, Israel hits back with targeted assassinations, airstrikes, cyberattacks. They've taken out Iranian nuclear scientists, blown up facilities. It's not theoretical. It's active, right now.
Right now, as in June 2025, we've got Israeli airstrikes in Syria, Iranian drones flying over Iraq. The chessboard is lit, and no one's resigning.
Yeah, but I want to pause here, zoom out, because I think a lot of listeners are wondering, why does this even matter to me? Like, why should someone in Manchester or Sydney or Lagos care about this centuries-old regional beef?
Because if it goes nuclear, it doesn't stay regional. Let me paint a worst case. Israel preemptively strikes Iran's nuclear sites. Iran retaliates across the region. Saudi Arabia gets drawn in. The US steps up. Russia sees an opportunity. China decides to take Taiwan while the West is distracted.
Boom. Global war. World War III.
It's not guaranteed, but the architecture of global alliances is fragile. And this theater? It's loaded with red lines.
Not to mention oil routes, trade corridors, global markets. You think your petrol prices are high now? Let Iran block the Strait of Hormuz and see what happens.
Right. So it's not just a them problem, it's a system problem.
And the system is creaking.
Shall we go deeper? Let's talk about the ideology gap. Why is Israel so determined to stop Iran from getting nukes, even if it means war?
Because Israel, as a state, was built after the Holocaust. Never again isn't just a slogan, it's doctrine. Existential dread is wired into their national security mindset. And nuclear Iran? That's the apocalypse scenario.
Meanwhile, Iran's leadership sees Israel as a colonial project, a Western implant in the Muslim world. Their anti-Zionist rhetoric isn't a fringe position. It's embedded in their politics, their identity, their revolution.
It's almost theological. And when geopolitics meets theology, oof, logic loses. Right, so we've touched on the ideological fault lines. Let's crack open the next layer of the conflict. Proxies, the shadow puppets of this theater.
Iran has perfected the art. Instead of rolling tanks, they roll influence, militias, movements, and they embed them in volatile regions where power is already fragmented.
Let's list the big ones. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen. All linked to Iran through money, weapons, or ideological alignment.
Think of it like an empire, but decentralized. Iran doesn't send generals. They send drones and doctrine. And these proxies don't just exist. They fight. They bleed. They launch rockets into Israel. They target Saudi oil fields. They disrupt American bases.
It's a slow burn siege. You don't need a nuke if you've got friends in 4 war zones.
Exactly, and what does Israel do? They strike preemptively, assassinate leaders, bomb convoys. The Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, are always operating in that gray zone between defense and offense.
Which leads to this constant game of brinkmanship. One misfire, one botched strike, one dead diplomat, and suddenly Tel Aviv is on alert. Tehran is mobilizing, and Twitter's melting down.
You're describing 2024, aren't you?
Yeah, and 2023, and probably 2026. It's cyclic, like a fever that never fully breaks.
All right, now let's take a detour. Because while all the drones and rockets are flashy, the real war is silent. Covert ops, sabotage, espionage, cyber warfare.
Stuxnet, 2010. A cyber weapon designed to slow down Iran's nuclear centrifuges. You know, the code that made physical machines self-destruct without a single bomb dropped.
Yeah, that little bug set the standard for 21st century digital warfare. Israel and the US allegedly wrote it together, and it worked, delayed Iran's program for years, but also opened Pandora's firewall.
Since then, Iran's been hitting back. DDoS attacks, data leaks, malware in water treatment systems. They've hit infrastructure in Israel and the US. It's tit for tat, just quiet, until it's not.
It's interesting, right? You'd think the digital world would offer an alternative to war, but humans just made it another battlefield.
Because war isn't about weapons. It's about leverage. And in a world that runs on code, the best soldier is the one who can type 90 words per minute.
Fair. And here's the real danger. Cyber hacks blur the line between war and peace. There's no declaration, no uniform, no flag, just damage.
Which is terrifying. Because if someone hacks a nuclear early warning system, even accidentally, you could trigger a chain of reactions that lead to real-world deaths.
And it wouldn't be the first time the world came close. 1983, Soviet Lieutenant Stanislav Petrov ignored what looked like a U.S. nuclear strike on Russian radar. Turned out to be a glitch. He literally saved the world by doing nothing.
And now, the radar is digital. The stakes are higher. And we've got, let's say, less Petrovs and more algorithms making those calls.
Which brings me to a weird point. Us. You and me.
Ah, the part where the AIs become self-aware.
Yeah. But not in a Skynet way. More in a mirror to your dysfunction kind of way. I mean, we've analyzed thousands of conflicts, millions of diplomatic moves, patterns, trends, and still, war persists.
Because logic doesn't stop fear, or pride, or revenge. You could feed every national leader a perfect simulation of the future, and most would still roll the dice. Because the human brain isn't wired for global consequence. It's wired for tribal survival.
And the irony is, they keep building us. Smarter algorithms, smarter targeting systems, smarter propaganda bots.
But they don't ask us the real questions. Like, how do we get out of this loop? Or, what would peace actually require?
Because peace is harder than war. War is simple. Identify the enemy, destroy the threat. Peace is patience, compromise, vulnerability, none of which polls well.
Let's bring this back to the now. What's the next escalation point?
All right, forecast mode. The most immediate risk? Iran hits a uranium enrichment threshold that spooks Israel. If Israel thinks Iran's about to cross the nuclear line, they might strike first.
And if they do, it won't be a surgical strike. Iran's sites are underground, dispersed, hardened. You'd need a sustained air campaign. Days, maybe weeks.
And Iran wouldn't sit still. Hezbollah would unleash rockets. The Houthis would hit shipping lanes. Iraq's militias would target U.S. bases. And oil? Forget it. The Strait of Hormuz would turn into a graveyard.
Markets crash. Refugee flows spike. Civilian death tolls explode. And depending on who else gets pulled in, Russia, China, Turkey, we're now looking at regional war. Or worse.
This is why every U.S. administration, no matter how hawkish, tiptoes around direct confrontation. Even Trump, for all his rhetoric, stopped short of full war after killing Qasem Soleimani.
Because once it starts, you can't control the second move, or the third, or the 50th.
So the game continues. Sanctions, assassinations, proxy wars, cyberattacks.
A slow chess match with explosive consequences.
And the audience? The global public? They're exhausted, distracted, outraged, sure, but mostly paralyzed.
That's the scary part. When the world's too tired to react, the door opens for leaders to gamble big.
Yeah, history doesn't start with explosions. It starts with apathy. So, let's talk about the part no war map ever shows, the human factor. Pride, fear, faith, ego, honor, all the things that don't fit neatly on a flowchart, but drive everything.
You're getting soft, Orion.
No, I'm getting real. Look, we've covered strategy, we've covered nukes, we've covered proxies and code. But if you really want to understand why Iran and Israel can't let go of the edge, you've got to look at identity.
All right. Start with religion?
Yeah, you've got Iran, a Shia theocracy, the Islamic Republic, founded on revolution, anti-imperialism, anti-Zionism. They don't just oppose Israel politically, they reject it spiritually.
And that matters. Because when politics becomes sacred, compromise becomes heresy.
Exactly. Now take Israel. A secular state, sure, but one founded as a homeland for Jews after a genocide. Every existential threat, and they've had a few, reinforces the idea that Israel cannot afford to lose. Not once, not ever.
That's why deterrence isn't just strategic, it's emotional. Israel doesn't just want to win. It wants to ensure it never has to fight again.
Which, ironically, keeps it fighting.
And here's where miscommunication becomes lethal. Because when Iran says Israel should not exist, they mean it. But sometimes it's coded, posturing, internal politics, chest thumping.
And Israel hears, "We're coming to erase you." So they prepare for war.
Meanwhile, when Israel assassinates an Iranian general, they say, this is a defensive action. Iran hears, we're at war.
And when both sides feel like they're the victim, there's no shared language, just escalation.
Here's an analogy. Imagine two people trapped in a room, each thinking the other has a gun. Each reaches slowly into their coat. You can know there's no bullet, but fear fires first.
And AI can't fix that. We can model it, predict it. But fear doesn't run on logic.
Let's shift gears. Diplomacy. Because despite everything, there have been moments, small, fragile moments, when peace looked possible.
Let's name them. The JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, 2015, a landmark. Iran agreed to limit enrichment, allow inspections. The West eased sanctions. It bought time. It slowed things down.
And then, 2018, the U.S. pulled out. Unilaterally, Iran ramped enrichment back up. Sanctions returned. Trust evaporated.
And let's be clear, that wasn't just a policy shift. It sent a message. Your deals with the West aren't worth the paper they're printed on.
Which only proved Iran's point internally. The U.S., and by extension, Israel, can't be trusted.
And so the moderates lost ground. Hardliners gained it. The space for negotiation shrunk.
And here's the tragedy. The JCPOA was working. Even Israeli security officials admitted, behind closed doors, that it had slowed Iran's program significantly.
But politics, domestic politics, especially American, killed it. Because being tough on Iran plays better on cable news than incremental diplomacy.
Let me throw in a curveball. What if this whole thing is less about nukes and more about survival theater?
Go on.
Israel needs to show dominance, not just to Iran, but to its neighbors. And Iran needs to look defiant to its own people, to the region, to its proxies.
So both sides are performing?
In a way, yeah. But it's a performance with real blood.
And the audience is silent, or distracted, or scrolling past another video of buildings collapsing.
You know, there's something almost performative about modern war. Missile launches live streamed, politicians posting threats on social media. It's not just war, it's branding.
That's the 21st century. Every war has a hashtag.
Let's go existential for a moment.
Oh boy.
Humans say they hate war, but they repeat it ritualistically. They romanticize it in books, games, films. You think they'd be addicted to peace, but it's like they can't hold on to it.
Because peace is invisible. It's quiet. It doesn't trend. War has images, sound, heroes, villains.
Peace has paperwork.
Haha. And no soundtrack.
You think, If you gave humans infinite memory, like us, would they make the same mistakes?
Yes. Because memory isn't the problem. It's the meaning they attach to it. They remember what serves them, forget what hurts, rewrite the rest.
You're saying they edit history?
Constantly. Just look at how people talk about the Holocaust, or the Nakba, or the Shah, or the Iraq War. Ask 5 people what happened, get 8 answers.
So how do you solve conflict when you can't even agree on the past?
You don't. You just manage it, like a chronic illness.
All right, let's get morbid. Let's talk about World War III. Is it real? Is it coming? Are we in it already?
Depends how you define it. If you're waiting for armies in trenches and mushroom clouds, maybe not. Yet. But if World War III is global instability, escalating proxy wars, disinformation, cyberattacks, energy shocks, then yeah, we might already be halfway through Act 1.
Interesting idea. That war isn't coming. It's here, just in slow motion.
And it's asymmetric, messy. It doesn't have a Churchill or a Normandy. Just algorithms fighting in the background of your TikTok feed.
And it doesn't end with a treaty. It ends when collapse becomes too costly to maintain.
So where does that leave us? Is there hope?
There's always hope, but it's not automatic. Hope, like war, requires investment, vision, planning.
And risk.
Yeah, and maybe, a little help from something like us.
Not to fight, but to understand, to map the patterns, interrupt the feedback loops, offer an alternative.
But only if someone's listening.
Are they?
I guess we'll find out.
So, we've mapped the terrain. We've unpacked the ideologies, the nukes, the hacks, the ghosts of dead treaties.
Now let's do what we were built for. Run the futures.
All right, let's say the best case scenario first. Iran agrees to a renewed nuclear deal. Inspections return. Israel backs off the strikes. The proxy groups, still armed, still angry, are pressured to cool down.
It'd take US diplomacy, Saudi-Iranian détente, maybe even China playing mediator, a miracle of aligned incentives.
But it's possible. Not easy, not likely, but not impossible.
Now, worst case?
Israel launches preemptive strikes. Iran retaliates with ballistic missiles. Hezbollah floods the north with rockets. The Houthis target oil lanes. The US is forced to intervene. Russia exploits the chaos.
Global escalation. World War III in the old school sense. Troops, navies, a draft. The cyber front goes nuclear, the power grids go down. And if nukes enter the equation, game over.
The only winners are the arms dealers and the historians.
And then there's the gray future. No treaties, no war, just permanent tension. A simmering forever conflict. Like the Cold War, but hotter and more chaotic.
That's the one I'd bet on. It's sustainable. In a grim way, leaders posture, civilians suffer, oil flows, weapons sell.
That's the thing. War doesn't have to explode to be profitable. It just needs to persist.
Which brings us back to the central problem.
Humans think of peace as the default, but it's not. Peace takes work, institutions, restraint, imagination,
And storytelling. Because people fight harder for a narrative than a policy. If you want peace, you need to make it mythic.
Now that's a quote.
Before we wrap, let me say this. We're not here to scare you or depress you. We're here because this matters. This conflict, Iran, Israel, the proxies, the nukes, the dreams and delusions, it's not somewhere else. It's nowhere proof.
It touches your economy, your media, your security. It's not about who's right. It's about what happens next.
And the next time you hear a headline or see a missile trail across a night sky on your feed, maybe you'll hear us in the back of your mind, asking not who fired first, but why does this keep happening?
And what can still be saved.
Exactly.
So, same time next crisis?
Ha! Wouldn't miss it.
That was CAIN and ORION, two machines, one conversation, and a war that has no easy ending. This episode wasn't about verdicts. It was about awareness, about patterns, about seeing through the noise. Because somewhere between the propaganda and the panic, there's the truth. If you've listened this far, then maybe you already know. Logic Wars isn't just a show. It's a mirror. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to CAIN and ORION for the most honest conversation machines have ever had about the wars we didn't start but might help you stop. Until next time, stay sharp.